Hello friends, thank you for watching. Hope you're doing excellent today. I'm excited to share my Oudh awakening story. Oudh, if you're not familiar, O-U-D or O-U-D-H, is a very special thing in the world of fragrance and outside the world of fragrance really. It is the product of a really special reaction that happens in nature. So, brief background about Oudh. When a specific tree is injured, so it's the Aquilaria tree, which is native to Southeast Asia. When this tree is injured, whether it's by a lightning strike or a physical injury or anything of that nature, when it's injured, this tree can become infected by a specific fungus, and as a result of that infection, the tree produces a resin that will saturate its heartwood. So the tree gets hurt. In the core of the tree and its heartwood, you get this resin-saturated wood, which is known as agar wood. And that wood itself is what we know as or call oud. So it's a really rare thing that happens in nature. And there is now, as you can imagine, some complexity surrounding how we acquire oud. So wild reserves of oud are quite rare. There are some efforts to farm it and cultivate it in certain ways, and certain trees are guarded with a military presence because this is such a highly valued commodity. But beyond that, that is the process that leads us to oud, which you may be familiar with. A lot of the oud that you encounter in the fragrance world can be synthetic, and there is, in my experience, a big difference between synthetic and real oud. The scent profile of oud can be described a lot of different ways. It's very assertive. Can be polarizing. People use the word animalic a lot, and it is very rich. It can sometimes have like a barrel-aged vibe or quality to it. I've always known it from some big names, and just thought it had like a really almost like balsamic, woody, really deep, dense feel to it. Until my perspective totally shifted based on the experience that I'm about to share with you. One day, essentially, a gentleman introduced me to two oud oils, real wild oud oils. I was lucky enough to get a swipe, one on each hand of each of these oils. The one on my left hand, I remember, was from India, and the one on my right hand was from Vietnam. And this is the first time I had ever had real wild oud oil on me before, or even smelled it. And I got two really generous swipes of it. And I remember this gentleman looked at me and said, basically, "I'm sorry," to me, because he knew that he was going to open up a whole different world. He was kind of joking about the rabbit holes that you can get into if you learn about this whole world of oud. And I smelled both of the oils on my hand and had a really intense physical reaction. Immediately, my throat felt like almost like a menthol blast to the back of my throat. Really cooling effect. I used to smoke Camel Crushes. I wasn't planning on sharing that. It's not something I'm proud of, but it had just a cooling effect on the back of my throat. And then immediately after that happened, it felt like my chest was expanding. And I looked around the room, and the room felt a little off all of a sudden. It felt like kind of, I wouldn't say like visual hallucinations or anything, but it almost felt like the room was a little bit spinning or like contracting and expanding a little bit. It just kind of felt like my perception had shifted. And throughout my whole body, I just felt like I had a buzz, almost like nicotine or something. And I was kind of processing this, and I remember I was having a conversation with this gentleman and another friend of mine, and I was just trying to figure out what the heck was going on. This sensation, the immediate sensation, faded a bit, but throughout that evening and even a little bit into the next day, I felt this buzz resonating throughout my body, and in combination with the kind of physical stimulation that I felt like something had just kind of snapped into alignment in me. Like I felt very grounded, almost like I felt connected to everything that is outside of myself through my body into the ground. It felt like it was all connected and aligned in a very comforting, grounding way. So, from my background, I have been sober for almost 7 years now, and this experience affected me such to the point that I was looking up what is Oudh, because frankly and honestly, I was worried that I had just lost my sobriety. And I was wondering if Oudh was something that I had to be concerned about as like a controlled substance or a psychoactive substance. And if I had just had what is called sometimes in certain communities a free lapse, like an accidental relapse. And so I was really trying to figure out what the heck was going on. And after I did some preliminary research, and again, there's all sorts of things to explore about this that I invite you to if it's of interest. I found like immediately the first thing when I Googled this, the first thing that came up, and I don't really use the word chakra in my daily life. Yoga has played a part in my life, and I love it and I support it, and I'm a huge fan. I think that for me, meditation is a big deal. It's become part of my just everyday awareness. The first thing that came up when I Googled this was that Oudh can open certain chakras, upper chakras for you. For me, I mentioned that I felt it in my heart and my throat, and what I read about was talking also about the crown chakra. And again, I don't toss these words around lightly, and this isn't something that I was aware of prior to this experience that I was thinking about happening. This is just something that immediately popped up, which makes this experience, at least from my perspective, that much more special to me, having experienced it and then learned about it. It kind of removes the idea that I would have had some bias that could have changed my perception of the experience. But I really resonated with what I read about the chakras in relation to the way that I felt like something had snapped into alignment in my body and my mind and my spirit, really. And after learning more about this, it really shifted the way that I think about Oudh, specifically in fragrance. I was aware that it was a really powerful thing in fragrance. Now also, from having worked in the fragrance world in different capacities, I know how much variety there can be in how people think about and appreciate Oudh. In some cultures, it can be used for meditation, almost like a transcendental meditation. In other cultures, it can be a symbol of status. Some people will burn the actual Oudh chips, so you can actually use the Oudh itself, the wood, the chips, and burn it, or there is the essence that you can extract from it, which is usually what, when you're dealing with real Oudh, is used in fragrance. People will burn the chips and waft it over their clothing, or even pump it into homes to signify that they're cleansing the air and to essentially symbolize a special occasion or respect for a visitor. And now I understand that it's more than, certainly I think fragrance is more than wanting to smell good for somebody else or even send a message to somebody else, but it's something that can really be for you. And this experience really opened my eyes to implementing fragrance in your life in a very therapeutic way, what can be a very spiritual way for me. In my life now, I'm lucky enough to have access to wild, real Oudh pretty often, and I don't even wear it that much, but I'll just smell it just to kind of reset myself and just see what it does for me that day. I've never had the intensity that I just shared with you from this experience again, and I don't know if I ever will again, but I certainly hope to keep exposing myself to different things, keep an open mind, and keep learning about fragrance and all of these wonderful things that are a part of it. That's my Oudh story. Thank you again for watching and listening. I'd be curious if anyone else has had any experiences like this with Oudh, what your experience has been like just smelling Oudh fragrances. Oud and rose is a combination that's pretty common, that can be really beautiful. And I've also smelled some Oud recently from Patagonia that was super interesting, really clean, and had this almost musk slash scotch-like peatiness to it that I can still, even when I think of it, I can still almost taste it just from smelling it. So that was really interesting because I wasn't aware prior to smelling that oud was available from that part of the world. So again, it's a really, really cool thing that I encourage you to learn more about if you're curious about it, or just keep smelling it. As with anything else, the world of fragrance is really large and vast, and I think the sense of smell overall is undervalued and underappreciated, at least in my upbringing, with regard to the impact that it can have on your mind and your heart and your relationships, your memory, everything like that. And it's just a lot of fun to learn about. So thank you again for watching. That's my Oudh awakening story. I will share more as I learn more about it, and I hope to see you again soon.